Welcome to the I Told You So podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Cole. I started this podcast because I noticed an erosion of societal discourse and how normal conversations are often fueled by polarization. The I Told You So podcast offers an opportunity for healthy discourse and effective discussions. I select topics to discuss with listeners and guests of the I Told You So podcast. Listeners and guests predict what will happen in the future. I track those predictions and announce who predicted accurately when those predictions become true. The podcast offers topics where listeners and guests can participate in discussions with the goal of predicting the future so they can proudly say, I told you so. My guest for this episode is Faridah Abraham. Faridah Abraham is from Nigeria and is currently a graduate student in communications studies and a public speaking teaching assistant at Kansas State University. Faridah is also a human rights activist for women and girls issues. On this episode, Faridah and I discuss curbing violence against women and girls by demanding accountability from leaders of faith and culture. Faridah, thanks for being a guest on the I Told You So podcast. Let me start by asking you to tell me about your background in working to reduce violence against women and girls and how this is a major issue in Nigeria.
Thank you, Ben. It's great to be here this afternoon. And for my background, I'm going to start with I had a bachelor's in linguistics, but it strengthened my work in the future because it helped me to be able to speak eloquently and effectively in communities when it was time to carry out this project. So it all started with applying for a job in a women's rights Advancement Protection Alternative Organization, which is an NGO back in Nigeria. And then while I was there, the project came in from the funders, the Ford Foundation, and they were interested in curbing violence against women and girls. So they had to put up a team, and I was one of the team members to go into the grassroots, specifically for grassroots communities to address this situation in the country. So the four communities are Jigawa State, Plateau State, Katsina, and also the Federal Capital Territory. And this places were located as a result of a baseline survey that was carried out at the beginning of the project to um, to be able to tell that these areas are the major areas within specific states that encounter this situation. So we had a baseline, and the next thing we did was going for advocacy engagements to leaders of faith and culture. And the advocacy engagement, it helped us introduce these leaders of culture and faith to the situation that is prevalent in their communities. And most of them, they didn't know about violence against their women and girls and the harm it's bringing to their communities. So we highlighted them through this advocacy. And also we had conversations with women leaders of faith, of religious organizations. And we also had these conversations with them, introducing them to what violence against women and girls is all about and what we have come to do to ensure this problem is curbed and there's sustainability even after the project. So that's a little about my background.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, uh, uh, as you mentioned, you're working with the Ford Foundation, and it's a project, and I think the project's name is Strengthening the Capacities of Local Women's Right Organization to Combat Violence Against Women and Girls. So, can you tell me more about your work with this project? I know you kind of explained a little bit about the background, but help me give me the details about that. Maybe elaborate more on your work with this project.
So my work with this project is I was the project technical assistant. So my work was basically the paperwork, putting up concept notes, organizing activities, activities like workshops, seminars to create awareness about violence against women and girls, and then to fish out leaders of faith and culture within specific areas in the country, like putting focus on the Federal Capital Territory, which is Abuja, in the center of Nigeria. We went into the AMAC Center. AMAC is like the municipal area of the community. So we went into AMAC and then specifically chose various AMAC areas in the community. So we specifically chose those areas because so much has been heard about women being violated and they don't speak up and nothing is done about it because they don't know what to do. So we went into these communities, spoke to their leaders, and getting access to these leaders is quite difficult because if you don't have something to give to them, like finance, they won't pay any attention to you. And if you do not have like a kind of power or force behind you, they wouldn't listen to you either. So the organization I worked with for this project, it was collaborating with one of the leaders in Nigeria, one of their wives, and it gave us a good leverage in the community with these leaders of culture and faith. So my work was also maintaining relationship with the stakeholders. Every now and then we have interactions on what is coming up, on what is presently going on in the community, how we can work with them to ensure the situation is handled correctly. So that's basically what my work was all about.
Yeah, so I've done some work in project management and monitoring and evaluation. And the ultimate goal of almost any project is, collecting the data, analyzing the data, looking at the outcomes and the outputs, and then, but ultimately, it's about making a positive impact. So maybe tell me about the impact of this project that you're seeing so far, and ultimately, what do you want that impact to be?
So the impact as a result of this Sport Foundation project, it brought about change because presently we know in three women experience violence all over the world. And back in Nigeria, about 30% of women experience some form of violence or the other, mainly from their intimate partners. And also for sexual violence, about 20% of Nigerian women experience this as well. So with this background, so much has been done. Like the UN defined violence against women and girls as any act that results in or is likely to result in any physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to anyone, either women, men, or girls. The attention is usually not given to the men. I really do not know why, but most attention is given to the women because we suffer this pain the most. And so this project, it has brought some form of sustainability because we worked with male champions, and the male champions are usually leaders of faith from different faith organizations, and also working with the international NGOs, working with other sister NGOs, and also women groups within the community. And also we worked with like the police, so that in case there's a perpetrator, we just call them up to take care of it. And we also work with public health facilities so that when we experience any contact with a survivor or a victim, we also call them as a channel of help to these victims and survivors to offer psychological help or therapy to them because of the situation they have gone through. So, and then we also worked with youth vanguards strategic youths all over the communities who educated other boys like them to ensure this situation is brought to ground zero. And still on the sustainability aspect, we also have the women of resilience in these four communities who are presently still working to ensure change comes in. So they are like the change agents of this projects. So that's what we've done so far,
You
and it's been working.
good, good. So you've mentioned leaders of faith and culture. So why is there such a focus on influencing the leaders of especially faith and culture?
So these leaders of culture and faith, they are the people their followers always look up to. They have influence, they have power, they are like the mediators between the community members and the outside forces like the nationals and the federals. So because of the influence they have over these people, especially leaders of faith, they always use the word of God, the religious scriptures to try to um, reduce this patriarchal system that takes place within their communities. And they also use religion as well to, most times, from what I've seen, they bring up so much misinterpretation of the scriptures. And it makes things just go haywire and worse than it used to be. But our influence, as a result of the Ford Foundation project, it's changed that narrative. So from misinformation, we brought up um, lots of pamphlets that changed this whole narrative. Like I know of the Khutbah, though it's of the Muslim faith, it's changed the misinformation that the people um, tend to dish out, the leaders of faith tend to dish out to the people, and then it brought sanity to the system.
Well, we all need more sanity, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So tell me more about the strategies that you are currently implementing through this Violence Against Women and Girls project.
So the strategies we used were working with the male champions. We brought them all together in one space, not just once, but over and over again in workshops and seminars. And we educated them about what violence against women and girls is all about. And they gave us a statistics of what's presently going on in their communities using human stories as well. So when they come for these meetings, most of them, they come with one or two females that are survivors or victims of violence because they have gained their trust. So they could bring them easily to workshops and seminars. So in the course of educating them about this present prevalence in the community, which is the violence against women and girls, they bring up human stories through these victims and the survivors, and it strengthens the conversation. And we also went into communities as well to to listen to human stories as well, not just within the male champions, but amongst those going through this situation. So we have just women of resilience who have contacts in the communities, and they know houses that these incidences have happened. So they tend to find a way, speak to them, bring them up to meetings, like workshops as well, whenever we're in the communities. And they open up because they trust that we're not just there to waste their time, but to bring lasting solution. There was an incident that happened some time back of a lady in one of the communities, and she was pregnant. She went for delivery, and while she was away for delivery, her 3-year-old daughter was violated by her neighbor. And after the incident, they rushed the child as well to the hospital alongside the mom, which is going through labor. And when she delivered of her child, she realized that her little daughter has been abused. So she tried all she could, but there was no solution, nobody to help. But thank God for we coming into the community. We took up the case and then we brought the perpetrator to book. But still, the perpetrator did not leave this woman. He kept taunting her that he has done it and he will still do it again. And if she does not take her time, he's going to abuse the mother as well. But all that has been curtailed with the law enforcement agents who we were working with to be able to bring sanity once again.
Yeah, that's important work, and I appreciate that story of that woman. So that's a horrible situation, but you're enlightening people, right? And you're hopefully it sounds like the work that you're doing, the strategies that you're implementing, are allowing more women to speak up about these violent experiences they're having, and bringing
Absolutely.
that to light for more people to know. So really appreciate the work you're doing. Uh, um, with this violence against women and girls. So, Faridah, thanks again so much for being a guest on the I Told You So podcast. So, if listeners want to learn more, you can send an email message to Faridah at ksu.edu, and that's Faridah's first name. It's FARIDAH at ksu.edu. And Faridah also has a Gmail email address, and that's Faridah Abraham 7, and that's her name, Faridah. And then Abraham is ABRAHAM 7 @gmail.com. Or you can find Faridah on LinkedIn. So, because this podcast is about predicting the future, my questions to those listening are these: what other strategies could be put in place to curb violence against women and girls? And how might you participate in this effort as a community engaged change agent? Another question I have is, what has worked in your communities so far, and how might you encourage victims and survivors to talk about their experiences? And then, what are the channels of support for victims and survivors in your communities? And what other channels can be introduced in the future? So I'd like to know. Please send a text message to me or call me. You can do that at 785-473-3721, or send an email message to me at ITYS at BenKohlITYS.com. That's ITYS at BenKohlITYS.com. Or you can post on any of my social media channels or leave a comment on this podcast episode. So I do ask you to go to the I Told You So podcast website at BenKohlITYS.com to connect and get your own I Told You So items at the merchandise link. You can choose from shirts and hats and hoodies and coffee mugs like the one I have right here, and lots of other items. So the I Told You So podcast is a space for healthy discourse and effective discussions with the goal of predicting the future so you can proudly say, I told you so. Also, if your business or organization is interested in advertising on the I Told You So podcast, please let me know that too. So thanks for tuning in to the I Told You So podcast. And thanks again to my guest, Faridah Abraham. And followers of the podcast are very important. So please follow, like, subscribe, leave a comment, give a high rating, and share with your friends. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Kohl, and I hope to hear from you soon.